Welcome, Scraft fans. This is the first of our quarterfinals, the round of it. It's Ryan versus Matticus. We're on World of Sleepers here. We've got Ryan in the top right corner and Matticus in the bottom left, both playing Terran. And I'm kind of curious to see what we get from Ryan. I haven't seen many of his games. Have seen a friendly. Did I cast the friendly? I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I've got a replay of a friendly between him and Lily. Can't remember if I casted that or not. I will try and get that one up at some point if I haven't already. So both of these players, we've seen a fair bit of Matticus in recent times. We've seen that he does like to get aggressive reasonably early. He quite likes his sort of double gateway, maybe triple gateway, sorry. I'm a Protoss at heart. He likes his sort of double racks, maybe triple racks, push across the map, Marine, Marauder, generally untech'd, to try and get that advantage in the early game. So we'll see if that comes out of him again. Ryan, I'm not entirely sure what to expect from his previous games. I just haven't seen enough of him to have an idea. I know that he has been playing a bit, he's been practicing, so interested to see what type of thing he goes for and whether we are, well, early signs are that yes, we are going to see this sort of double racks play from Matticus. So neither player going for a frighteningly early expo, and I wouldn't mind seeing that. This is World of Sleepers, it's a big old map. In general, I don't really mind a kind of barracks into expo type of build. I say I don't mind it. I don't mind it so long as you've done a little bit of scouting, so long as you've checked, for example, that you're not being proxied, so long as you have maybe been across the map, been into your opponent's base, and just check that everything looks normal. Obviously you get across the map, you see that your opponent is actually working on 3 racks. You think to yourself, right, maybe the expo isn't the right thing and I'd be better with a bunker. But assuming that everything looks normal from your opponent, I don't see anything wrong with just going racks and straight away slapping down the expo. It means that your expo is finished by 9 and you can start mining off 2 bases and really ramping up your production. As seems to be really common in the EMS league, both of these players with quite early engineering bays. Against Terran, I'm not sure I see the need. I don't mind it against, for example, Protoss. Get the engineering bay done nice and early means you can have that turret in the mineral line, which means that you're safe against an Oracle. Also means if there's a DT warp in, you're able to see those DTs even if you don't have a scan ready to go. So against Terran, unless you're planning some sort of timing push, maybe with a +1, a very early eBay is less critical. But with all that said, both of these players are now researching +1 attack, and that's a good thing. So fair enough. As you can see, Ryan's slightly ahead, but it doesn't look like he's gearing up for any sort of timing push with to coincide with +1 finishing. So the expand for Matticus is about half done, and no sign yet from Ryan that he is going to expand. I noticed that he's cut workers. He's no longer building workers. So, commentators curse, man, every time. Every time I say somebody hasn't done something, they go right ahead and do it. So it is worth remembering, and fair enough, the workers have started up again. Just because your main is saturated doesn't mean you should stop building workers. Continue to build those workers, continue to get more workers mining Matticus. Because, should you find yourself with 24, with 30 workers mining on your main, it means that as soon as your expo finishes up, as soon as the natural finishes up, you can transfer them and you start getting the benefit of that extra base straight away. Your income suddenly leaps up immediately. You don't have to wait then to saturate that. So where are we at then? Both players actually looking remarkably similar. If I just go for the slightly bigger zoom, we've got a 3rd barracks coming down, a siege tank in production from the factory. Here, it's the same story. It's a siege tank in production from the factory. Only 2 racks at present. But there is money in the bank here from Ryan, so I imagine we will shortly see some more production coming down. Maybe a starport, maybe a second and a third and a fourth barracks. Expo has finished up, but you know, again, a bit slow on the worker production. Just one building here, none building from the men. Yeah, quick peek at the army supplies, so nothing particularly of interest to report there. A slight advantage to Matticus, but it's not significant at this stage. There we have the third racks coming down, so but they're both going to be very similar in terms of production capabilities. No starport for either of them. You know, commonly in Terran you see what is generally referred to by players and casters alike as a 2-1-1, and that means 2 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport. It's just kind of, it's the backbone of a standard Terran opening. It means you can get out you know, a reasonable number of Marines for defense, for harass, whatever you want to do. It means you can be building siege tanks for the same purpose. It means you can be building medevacs. And then from there, you know, once you get your 2 bases up and mining, you've got your 2-1-1 for production, you can then start making decisions about where you want to take your tech. It is worth pointing out that, you know, even if you are going to go mech, and it looks like Ryan is going mech, he's got this second factory coming down. Where's the scan? Just checking here that his opponent has got an expo, and as he checks, I think he just missed this move out. He may have seen the tail end of it. Let's see if we see stuff happening. We can see this siege tank coming forward. It's not a bad position for it, but of course Matticus can come into this position and focus on this expo, and it would be hard to push into if these 2 siege tanks are sieged up in the back. What Matticus does not want to do is come forward into this siege tank range. These Marines and these Marines will be very squishy indeed. No medevacs to heal them, so splash damage from tanks could be absolutely critical. This third tank from Ryan, I'd really like to see it coming down. What he needs to do is repair this base, maybe lift it off and just fly it to safety, but it is just going to go down. He needs the SCVs repairing that, and that's not what's happened. So siege tanks on the high ground now from Ryan do open fire, and Matticus is going to take an absolute beating here if he tries to push up this ramp. This is, you know, this is suicide. These siege tanks are just meeting out so much damage from the back. So what we'll see here is, in terms of units killed, Ryan has a great advantage, but he has lost his expo. So what do you do about that? You know, you have just absolutely shreked your opponent's army. You've battered it really badly, and your opponent's had to run home, but you've lost that expo. It would be tempting at this stage to just try and push across the map with superior army numbers. He has got some bank, so theoretically he could turn up with a larger army, but as we can see, it really isn't that different at present. Matticus, during that push, not forgetting to continue with his production. So production tabs looking pretty healthy for both players. That Marine, that poor Marine on his own, following across the map and just gets shot to pieces. Yeah, you know, if you're in Ryan's position, I guess had it been me, I've lost the base. But I know I've done substantial damage to the numbers for my opponent. I guess my next move is to drop the scan over here and try and get an idea of how much army my opponent's got left. If I see this, I stay at home and I try my best to catch up. If I see that actually the army that I killed has been significant and that there's not much at home, then maybe, yeah, worth pushing across the map. So how does he catch up from here? If we look at the income tab, it's going to be a bit painful, and it is, you know, that is quite a big difference there. He's got this double factory production and not much coming out of the factory for Ryan. So if he gets a big siege tank advantage, let's have a look here, 2, 4, 6, 8. He can push in here pretty effectively with siege, with just creeping forward with the siege tank. These siege tanks are all up here. I'd really like to see our players push forward, you know, just extend the perimeter of your base to where you want it to be. I know it feels kind of nice and safe up on this high ground, but you're also on high ground here, and your siege tank range would cover this whole area. So I'd really like to see our players move their units down into positions at the front of the expand once they have those naturals up and mining. Yeah, so how does Ryan get back into this game? I mean, some of the things you can do is just drop 2 expos. just go, right, I've taken damage. My opponent, I have sent them packing, you know, drop and expand here, drop and expand here, and absolutely YOLO it and just hope for the best. If your opponent lets you get away with that, you know, suddenly your income will overtake theirs, and you can catch up in that way. Of course, the chances of them sort of hanging out and allowing you to do that are slim. So what other options are there? There is the drop option. If you don't fancy the full-on frontal attack, you know, you can load up 2 medevacs, boost into the back here, and see if you can do your own damage. This can be abused heartily. You can drop in here, you can snipe this. How's this army going to get there? Notice on this particular map, World of Sleepers, you've got these mineral patches separating the natural from the third. So you can't move your army through here until you've mined these. So normally what you do is, simultaneously as dropping the third, just set a worker to mine these, and as your third's building, the worker will go back and forth and mine out these mineral patches so that you can freely move backward and forward here. So both of these players really need to do that. Otherwise, it's just so easy to snipe this third. If you haven't done that, this just doesn't make sense as a third. You'd be much better off in this location or even this location. Because those are much quicker to get to. You know, you've got to go past here to get to here if this is not mined out. Let's check that income tab again. It's beginning to even up a bit. Ryan is beginning to claw back some of that, but there's a big difference in gas income. Now it does look like a battle cruiser is going to be on the menu for Matticus, and he is researching Yamato cannon. So you know, we'll likely see this battlecruiser blink into his opponent's base. It looks like he's going to try and time that together with this push out. This is something you've got to be careful of. If you click across the map, everything takes the shortest path available to it, which means the medevacs go in a straight line, all the rest of your units go in a zigzag path, and so your medevacs can end up the front and you can lose them. As it happens, Ryan has not attacked these medevacs. No, Ryan really needs to move his siege tanks down into a better position. He doesn't want to lose this base again. He cannot afford to lose this for a second time. And at present, the only way he can save this is to lift it up and fly it out of here. If these siege tanks siege up in this location, there is trouble to be had. So stuff beginning to take fire from the siege tanks in the high ground, but this base is going to disappear fast. There's a lot of damage output from this. As you can see, the army supply favours Matticus. If he tries to push the issue here, though, he is going to get an absolute beating. The siege tanks on the high ground here are just dealing out damage for free. I mean, this one has 19, 20 kills, and still it's meting out the damage. You know, that's a bad beating. A really bad beating. If we look at the army supply, it has tanked for Matticus. It was not a good idea to try and push that. So 85 units killed to 41, and Ryan does the right thing here. It is absolutely correct to move out. Hopefully those are the scans going down at home. They are. This is absolutely the correct play. Scan across on the other side of the map, see what your opponent has got left, and go push. I would really fancy his chances here if it were not for one thing. There isn't a medevac in sight, which means these Marines are really squishy. They have got the +1 armor, they have got +1 attack, similar upgrades to Matticus. Now, what he has to avoid here is hesitation. He needs to get in and get damage done. And the way to do it is siege 2 tanks up, move 2 up here, siege them up, move 2 up here, siege them up, unsiege these, move them forward, siege them up. That's the way to work with siege tanks. Siege them up, move them forward, siege them up, move them forward. This is just going to be an obliteration. Wants to pull the Marines back, no point in them being forward. Pull them out of the range of the siege tanks. So these siege tanks, he needs to be careful, needs a scan on the high ground. If he sieges these up, he can get the scan off on the high ground. He can obliterate this stuff. He's got the numbers. If he parks here, he is going to lose to this pretty badly. So where are we at? So these guys moving in against the planetary, you know, without medevac support on their own, this isn't a great plan. They need the siege tanks as well. These siege tanks are what will do the damage. Looks like the planetary is going to fall. There's no repair from Matticus. No repair is a bit savage. Let's have another peek at the army supply. It is extremely even, but there's a lot of siege tanks here for Ryan. If he can get these sieged up, and he needs this high ground vision, you need units up this ramp, or you need to drop a scan. Otherwise, if you can't see it, you can't shoot it. As the Marines move forward, you should see these siege tanks open fire, and it looks like Ryan will have enough, perhaps, to force the issue. Where there's obviously the other side of the map here, these are uncontested, these two, so they have cleaned up the men, but you know, the men wasn't really mine in any way, and they're not doing anything about this army on the other side of the map. Ryan, you need the high ground vision. You're just going to die down here. Oh no, this is a terrible mistake. He did have the numbers to force this, but he isn't going to manage it without that high ground vision. So it does look like Matticus holds at home, and with no answer on the other side of the map to these battle cruisers, it looks like Matticus is just going to be able to clean up here. There's siege tanks in production, but he doesn't need siege tanks. He needs things that shoot up. Cyclones would have been okay, Vikings, Marines, he needs all of that stuff. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, this is a horrible thing to watch. These high ground units just raining down carnage on what's below. So I suspect we're going to see the GG shortly, because I cannot see a way for Ryan to come back into this. In the production tab, there is, of all things, an engineering bay. You know, you're going to need an awful lot of turrets to see off 3 battle cruisers, a 4th in production, a 5th a 5th in production, a 4th parked at home here that can blink across the map at any time. I don't see a way back from here. So what have we learned? There was definitely a moment there when Ryan could have won this game. He had a significant army advantage, and the key really was that high ground vision. You know, pushing into elevated siege tanks is difficult. You need things in the air, you need medevacs, so that your Marines have got some longevity. Look at this siege tank, only 13 hit points left on it. You know, one more volley from Ryan's siege tanks on the low ground, and both of these are dead. But as it turned out, it was not to be. So that high ground vision is crucial. You can deliver it from scans from home, although maybe by then he'd lost the orbital. I wasn't really watching that side of the map, so not 100% sure. But the other thing you can do is you can just stim, you know, a couple of Marines up the ramp. All they've got to do is survive long enough to give your siege tanks sight for a shot. But being repaired, this planetary just never dies. What Matticus needs to do is actually focus the workers. Can't let these turrets finish up, because they'll actually mete out quite a lot of damage to him. Meanwhile, his army over here is having a ball. If he moves a couple of siege tanks over to this position and sieges them up, they will see this stuff off pretty handily. You know, the useful thing about the siege tanks attacking this is when the workers are repairing, the splash from the siege tanks will actually kill all the repairing workers, and that will sort you out. So for reasons best known to himself, Ryan, not GG just yet, but it is over. There we go. So first game goes to Ryan. GG.